Hello everyone, I'm Feño and I'm here with my dear friend, my boy Dan Tom here, and we are here to talk about what's on the mouth of everyone lately, which is like corruption, fight rigging, fixing, whatever you want to call it. We want to approach this from multiple points. Obviously, you guys know I've been a fight fan for like forever. I watch like basically all the UFC fights, and also I've been like training for a long time. But I bring my boy here downtown because like he lives there in the eye of the hurricane in Las Vegas, so he also has like better connection to the actual world of MMA. He trains at Extreme Couture, and and you are like you can say you're an MMA judge, right?
No, no,
No,
no,
no,
no.
no.
I,
But
I,
you know the in and outs about being a judge.
I passed like the first
Okay,
whatever
but you have that,
intermediate
yeah,
course of it. That's about
the
it.
first
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
yeah.
I didn't do the full thing to get go through with licenses or anything like
Okay,
that.
okay, yeah. You're not licensed, but you know more about judging than most people. At the very
I
least,
passed some
yeah.
judging. I passed some judge and referee tests. That's about it. But I did take the courses.
Okay, that's more than good enough. So okay, so let's talk about the thing that everyone has been talking lately, and this has the air is still not clear about this, but so last week Saturday we have an event, very like uh inconsequential fight, you could say, between Isaac Dulgarian and Yadiel del Valle, and we see some strange movements on the lines like a couple of hours before the event begins, I think. And then we get to the fight. So Dulgarian was a pretty sizable favorite. I guess everyone was expecting him to wrestle Del Valle here. Fight begins. Dulgarian shoots for a takedown, gets like super clean in the hips. For those that are not familiar with Dulgarian, like a sprint wrestler, like similar to like Raul Rosas, you could say. Like this is a guy that just like goes in on takedowns on the first round and just like sprints to get a takedown and the rear naked choke.
Yep,
Uh,
sells out.
he gets clean on the hips, which is like for him is like guaranteed takedown. Doesn't finish it. Gets reversed. Del Valle starts fishing for a rear naked choke, and let's say that the rear naked choke sequence especially was kind of sketchy. I have broke it down. I have talked about it. So Dulgarian taps, and it proves that the movement was there was a reason behind the movement, right? Usually, I've been talking about how these movements usually are because there was a leak about an injury. That's how it mostly happens. So it's not like rigging a fight per se, but a fighter is going like compromise into a fight with very little chances of winning, mostly because they need a check, because the UFC like it really incentivizes you to never like back out of a fight, especially during fight week. They hate that. They're willing to bury you. Just look what happened to Sarukian. He's not even being considered at the top of the division right now. The UFC hates
Yeah, it's
Sarukian.
crazy.
He's like enemy number one right now. And so yeah, usually it's a fighter that goes into the cage like super injured. We have two very clear cases this year. We had what's the name, Brazilian guy with the broken right hand,
Lucas Almeida
Lucas
versus
Almeida.
Michael Aswell.
Lucas
Yeah,
Almeida goes against Aswell with a clearly injured right hand. Goes into the fight, doesn't throw the right hand at all, gets clipped, finish on the first round. An even crazier one than that, Jared Gordon gets
yeah,
run over by a car and
yeah,
still goes to fight and gets knocked out, which absolutely sucked.
yeah. There was no crazy line movement on that one. That one they did a pretty good job of keeping under wraps.
They kept the secret,
Um,
yeah, but it's still
so you
crazy
can
that
all,
happened, yeah.
yeah, you can also say the same with Ankalaev Pereira over the rematch that happened this year.
You
There
can say
wasn't
that
crazy line
about
movement.
both times, yeah.
But I will say the one that did have line movement was the first one you mentioned. That had decent line movement, uh, almost near 100 points where this was. But that doesn't mean it's going to set off alarms, right? Because it's the suspicious line movement. Now with the Aswell and that with the Aswell and Almeida fight, there was, off my memory, roughly the same amount of line movement. If it wasn't 100 points, like it was 90. You know what I'm saying? Like we're talking about that kind of a difference. However, and maybe that one was flagged. We don't know exactly what the FBI is investigating and not investigating right now. But that one actually makes more sense, right? Because anyone with two eyes could see the unofficial weigh-ins or the official ceremonial weigh-ins, and you see one dude with a blown up hand,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
We
Yeah.
didn't we didn't see Jared Gordon with the knee sleeves until he walks in with the knee sleeves, and then we're like, oh shit! At that point, it's really too late to get any action outside of books that have like live markets. So nothing too crazy there. So with the line movement having a whole day for people to be like, oh, I'm gonna buy out of my Almeida bets, right? If that was the case or whatever, then not as suspicious. And again, not that this always indicates the fixed fight, but if we're talking about, because there's a difference between, I mean, throwing a fight is fixing a fight, but you can fix a fight without throwing a fight, if that makes sense. There's two different distinctions. And if you are throwing a fight, well, general logic is it's got to be the favorite, and Almeida also was not the favorite. He was the underdog in that fight. So there's probably a lot of reasons, despite the movement, why that's not being talked about or wasn't flagged. Even though we could argue, like, what are we doing here? Quality control of the UFC. These are the effects of the UFC schedule, and what Fenyo just mentioned, their business practices on. I labeled it in an article I wrote, the relentless UFC schedule. It's that we're seeing the UFC and the commissions alike. They're rubber stamping almost anything for rollout, right?
Yep.
Guys with messed up hands, guys with one eye, guys flagged by the FBI. The fight goes on.
Yeah, actually, like Dumas was approved to fight like earlier this year with
Ankle
wearing a
monitors.
monitor on his ankle. Like the commission did not give a shit. Like they were like,
Yeah.
okay, you get that sorted out. We don't worry about that part. Like, and he did not
Yeah.
get it sorted out, by the way.
Yeah. And a lot of these, which I'm sure we'll talk about here, are systemic problems, And it was ironic when I wrote that piece for Junkie Fan. I got a lot of crap mainly from the betting crowd. And I wrote specifically for the betting crowd. I didn't fan flame be like, we're going to see fixed fights. But I talked about the barrier to entry being lower for MMA and the quality control being poor and the UFC these days. That, yeah, we're going to see fighters and much more suspicious things with the injuries. This is something you pointed out in a tweet I remember distinctly, Fenyo. But, fighters knowingly going forward with injuries and stuff, what we're talking about, and how that can be manipulated. Now, at worst, it's the Darrick Minner situation that everybody's connecting
Yeah.
to, right? And the FBI actually, we do know now that they have folded that James Krause Darrick Minner case into this current Dulgarian case. And the Darrick Minner one was an injury. I didn't suspect an injury. I don't blame you or anybody who did, by the way, watching the Dulgarian fight. But with the Darrick Minner case, this was predicated on an injury for the bets and the fishiness, right? And you see something, you see him kind of throwing it with reckless abandon. There is kind of like, you'll notice kind of an upped aggression, right? Whether it's an injury, whether it's a fight thrown, or whether it's a fight thrown and they decide not to throw it. And I'm going to cite
Yeah.
examples that aren't tinfoil hat. The third example there is Taehyun Bang versus Leo Kuntz.
Yeah.
Bang Kuntz,
That one,
right? What,
the official version on that fight is that the Korean mob was like pressuring Bank to lose that fight. He was the favorite, and but then Bank decided to just fight for real to try to win, and he still lost the fight, which is like crazy because like everything gets
but
more complicated there.
But if you look at it, he was throwing with an intensity where he wasn't even trying to win the fight. It was a greasy split, right? But what I think he did is he decided not to throw the fight, but I think he decided to fight really hard to try to sell it because he knew he was under investigation, which
Yeah,
is what
yeah.
I think Dulgarian was doing. Everyone was like, oh, but Dulgarian, did fight the hands. And I'm not going to focus on the punching on the back thing because we've seen, pound for pound women's champion Valentina Shevchenko
No, yeah,
use that defense in the
I
title
think
fight,
that
like,
I think that part was like I think that
overblown.
that was one of like the least concerning things.
Me
I
too.
think
Me too.
I
Yep.
think that the two biggest things for me when it comes to rear naked choke defense is when Del Valle decides to punch. Dulgarian has like very easy access to go like 2-on-1 on the bottom arm, and he doesn't go for it.
Yes.
Which I
No.
don't buy. I don't buy that he doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The
and
grip fighting.
the last one for the tap out, the angle was kind of off first, but second, Dulgarian has been peeling off the top arm multiple times, and he decides not to do it on the last time, which is like,
Yep.
we know you know how to do it.
But because it is mine again, just like Taehyung Bang, he's swinging, going like, "Okay, I'm gonna try to win the fight." But you almost see him swinging, and he did. He was an aggressive guy, Bang, right? But you almost see him swinging, Fanyo, like he wants to get knocked out too. And you almost see him
Yeah,
squint, going, "Oh, okay, here we go."
yes,
If it's something comes back at me, and you see Darrick Minner do a similar thing, right? Even though different context, Darrick Minner does a similar thing, and what he's doing is he's selling out for leg kicks with his injured leg, so he can have plausible
yes.
deniability. Going, "Oh no, look how hard I was fighting. How could I throw a fight if I was A, fighting hard, and B, said fighting hard was what caused my injury. I didn't have the injury before the fight. Not that injury was clearly from my hard leg kicks,
Yeah,
right?"
and
And
it's funny because like Topology, who they flag like sketchy fights, right? I think
yeah,
both of those fights remain like legal under Topology. I think the Derek Miner and the Tehue Bank fight both
yeah,
are like actual fights that are recognized on the records of their
that is weird.
fighters.
Yeah, that is weird. Yeah. Yeah, that is weird. But rounding it and to back to what you were saying, and I'm just trying to connect all three here to this one. There wasn't much on the feet, right? But what we're talking about on the ground, I think the efforts for Dulgarian, to your point, was the initial hand peels, right? And there was a point where he got bellied down, and that's ironic. He wasn't finished there, right?
Yeah.
And you're a guy as skilled as Dulgarian. You're a wrestler. You understand when you have your base and when you don't. And he was fish flailing like a dude on his first day in the gym wearing the Moneyberg socks. You know what I'm saying? Like remember when he got Dulgarian belly down and he was almost overselling it. You see his legs go kick 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 kick, kick like
And
he's a
also,
fish out of the
yes,
water.
yes, and
I was like,
also
come on, dude, really? Come on, are you really freaking out that
and
much?
also that part like that part also like brings it to the submission side, because like if you want to throw a fight, like just covering up when you're getting flat line with a dude on your back is like perfect. You get a
Yeah,
TKO super quick in that
yeah,
situation. But he didn't. He
no.
really wanted to get submitted, it seemed.
Exactly. Like, yeah, because if your reaction is that bad, like I said, then you probably can't survive that position, right? But he actually survived it longer. The fight actually kept going after that and changing position. But I was like, oh no, he was back to my point though. I think that was him, Fenyo, trying to sell it. So when I'm watching live, and granted, we don't know anything. We still don't technically, right? So I want to say that the investigation's still going on, but with the knowledge of the line movement, right? Because the numbers don't lie, right? And with all this coming out prior, I did have that knowledge, so I was biasedly watching with the viewpoint. That being said, I was just like, oh, this is suspect, and it was suspect to your point, Fenyo, from the takedown. Actually, even before that, the fact that he didn't finish that takedown that you pointed out was very suspect. But yeah, there's definitely connections as far as the theatrics involved and what has been confirmed so far, right? Using
Yeah,
those examples.
and now we don't know what's the extent of the whole thing. So Harry Mack, who has been the main like source from all the controversy here, he said earlier today that Factory X, the whole gym was being raided by the FBI, but then Factory X Twitter account, they say that nothing happened. So
Yep. Yeah, I didn't realize they follow me that account, and I think Montoya's wife follows me too, because I've shouted them out in the past. And again, folks, good or bad, we should all wait until things come out. But it makes me sad to see people that I would consider that are high character people. Like Mark, I do consider Mark Montoya one of the high character judges, corners, and coaches. I haven't had the privilege to train under him, but I've interviewed him in person, on the phone, and other coaches that I am close to, like Eric Nixick and his in other words his colleagues. speak very highly as well. As far as Mark Montoya being a
Yeah, it
high
seems like
integrity
he's
individual,
held in very high regard in the MMA community. Yeah.
and even Royval, who clearly had some type of disagreement because he left that camp, right? Royval was of the many Krause guys. They were kind of sister gyms, right? Because
Yeah.
Montoya even coached Krause, and they would work corners. Montoya and Krause were in the same corner for that crazy Anthony Smith fight that probably should have been
Yes.
stopped. So they've and their style stylistically, as you know, this Fenyo, being an analyst and knowing kickboxing and Muay Thai very well, there's a very similar style. So it's like you could see the transfer on why it'd be an easy jump for the
Yeah.
fighters to make.
Yeah.
But but Royval split ways, by the way, folks. And shout out to James Lynch who made note of this. I think it's important to note. Royval both split ways. Dude's been under scrutiny for the same associations, right? As everybody is unfairly or unfairly, mainly unfairly, I'd say. And anybody who opens their mouth right now, like, I give them props because people are just being, the internet's being the internet, right? People are making up their minds and it doesn't matter what you say. And in fact, the people who go out in good faith and try to give you something, like Mark Montoya going on Ariel's show, it's already being twisted around, right?
Yeah.
Um, but, sorry, losing the string on that point there. But, I was just saying, I would just be willing to say, like, yeah, wait for things to come out. And if I were, a betting man, oh, the Royval thing. Sorry. The Royval thing. He came out to defend Mark Montoya as well. It's like he has no reason to do that. He's not
No,
even with the gym anymore,
for sure.
and because
And there has
for
been
what that's
some
worth.
stuff with Factory X. Like I'm not saying like shady stuff, but like a lot of fighters have been leaving in the last few years. Some guys that
Yeah.
have been there like forever. Not only Royval. Jonathan Martinez left early on this year.
Yep.
There's this guy, lightweight,
Alex
who.
Hernandez.
Huh? No, Alex Hernandez is
Alex
with Royval.
Hernandez.
Yeah. No, but there's another guy, a newer guy, lightweight. Fought on a pay per view earlier this year. He's now with the MMA Lab. Um, what's
Wow.
his name, man? But he has like the classic like Montoya style, like switches stances, kicks the leg a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean
Uh,
a lot of guys leaving, and I'm not saying that it is related. It's just that it's like it gets very confusing, right? But
yeah.
I think the rival like speaking up, I think means a lot in this situation.
It does, and I will say, so we could, talk about the other stuff you want to talk about as far as intricacies on how fights can be fixed in the ways that we don't think about. As guys Lou DiBella would say, legal fight fixing that you can see in a lot of sports, or that happens in a lot of sports and all that stuff. I'll just add to say is that the frustrating thing is that not only cannot people wait before they start dragging names, is that in this day and age, it legitimately takes longer because, well, one, we got a dude who probably can't find his own pecker in Cash Patel. If he was stuck on in a room with himself, I mean, just I'm not trying to make any inappropriate jokes. I'm just saying the guy's an idiot. I'm trying to insult his intelligence there, by the way. But you
We'll
got
meet
that.
again. We'll meet again in Valhalla.
Yeah, I'll see you in Valhalla, Dulgarian. I'll see you in Valhalla. I put that "I'll see you in Valhalla" meme under one of my betting things like weeks ago. I'm gonna bring it back now for this card, by the way, the fucking Cash Patel. But in all reality, though, aside from the FBI, legitimately, by the way, not just me throwing some bullshit out here, like people who work in the institution saying the FBI is not as strong as it once was years prior, for example, right? So that's going to add to the time on cases getting pushed through. But in this day and age, it legitimately takes years to put these cases together because now that gambling's legal, it's so hard. You're searching all these dormant to not dormant accounts,
Yep.
seeing who's connected, following the paper trail. Whereas before, correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't take much longer than a year to get the official story for Bang Cunts. And by the way, I don't know if you know this venue. I told you this, but I worked at MMA Junkie Radio, and our studio was in the Mandalay Bay, right? And through that, we had contacts at the sports books and friends that I still talk to this day, by the way, right? Some of those guys aren't there, but one of the old sportsbook managers said, and this isn't crazy. I don't know why I had to like caveat this because they reported it, like they follow their protocol. But some sketchy, they said Japanese looking Yakuza dudes. Maybe it was, although Taehyun Bang is a Korean fighter. Not that necessarily matters. but a bunch of Japanese yakuza looking dudes in suits came up and unloaded suitcases of money to bet on Bang in that fight, by the way. And this was just in my own backyard where I work, right? So, but I'm not trying to like go, oh, I'm so cool. I was in the same place or whatever. I'm saying that to say that like it wasn't that hard to track 10 years ago because when it was illegal, you had only a couple of illegal, you only have a handful of illegal books you have to investigate, and the rest of the action is going to come in places like right here in
Yeah,
Vegas, right? Which, say what you will about speculation of all these fighters coming out now and saying I was approached and then redacting their statements. The ones that weren't clearly joking, like Lando Venata, all those were Vegas
yeah,
fighters too, by the way. So
yeah,
just
and
so you know,
there's the like the Iridium connection too, which like a lot of those
yeah,
fighters are in Factory X or were like associated with James Krause. But there's a lot of them that were not, that are not, but they're still under the same management, and there are still some ties there, right?
yeah. There's an undeniable connection there, which is really unfortunate for everybody, right? Because
Yeah, it's
yeah,
unfortunate
there's an
for.
undeniable connection with management. But that's kind of what linking this to the structural talk, that's what the UFC's current structure incentivizes, right? Are these cottage industries of managers and camps that they can rely on. And these are not so coincidentally the ones we keep seeing from
Yeah,
filling our cards to filling the contender series on the bottom level on up, right?
yeah.
So,
I mean, I've been saying for years, and most people agree with this. It's not that it's something, but if your manager has like too many fighters, they're working for the UFC. They're not working for you. You always keep that in
yeah.
mind. um,
But here's the bad thing for everybody, though, is that the fact that everything is so interconnected, and as much as that works for the UFC's benefit, it's if the FBI is realistically investigating, right? They don't have to reach that far to do things like RICO cases to start tying things. I mean, they already connected apparently the Krause to this Dulgarian one,
yep.
both investigations at least on face level. But when it comes to time to doling out charges, they don't have to reach that far for RICO cases in the MMA world. When you think about it, everybody's so freaking interconnected and careless and accessible that even if they're not telling on themselves, which a lot of people do. Yeah, the authorities don't have to reach that far if they're actually doing their job.
Yeah, and, the other thing that people don't realize when it comes to an investigation here is that MMA gyms, even the top gyms, are insanely accessible. Like
Mm,
it is not like boxing. This is not like boxing. Like MMA gyms, like you can sign up to
scary.
any of the top gyms tomorrow if you want. You can show up at
Yeah,
Factory X
it's
and
scary.
say
Yeah.
like I want in. You can show up at American Top Team, and yeah, you're not going to the pro classes immediately, but you're still getting like proximity to the pros. So information is like way more likely to be leaked when it comes to that, and that
Yeah,
goes to
I mean,
injuries too. So
I remember my first year at Extreme Couture. Like, I'm just like, well, I can just walk into the while the pro practice is going on and watch like Martin Kampman and Tyson Griffin spar and shit. And I never used it for useful information. If I ever talked to the guys, I'd be talking to Mike Pyle or Forrest Griffin about like video games or some stupid shit. But I'm like, dude, I probably could have got some inside info, man, if I wanted something. But to your point, though, right? All jokes aside, like it is to Defenio's point, it is that accessible. Like it's pretty crazy.
yeah, so taking this to a more like abstract like plane, let's talk about like the ways that you can like fix or manipulate a fight, because as I was telling you earlier before starting the recording, I feel like some like more maybe newer fans, not so hardcore fans, um they when you talk about like fight fixing, they think about like all parties involved are participating in that, like it's like basically WWE, but you make it believable, and
Yeah,
it's never like that. So let's talk about like
yeah.
the more usual I mean the easiest way to fix a fight, obviously, and it's not that easy because like sometimes you cannot tell, but you pay off a guy to lose. That's like the more like straightforward way to fix a fight, and with the guy that's winning, he's never on the loop with it, right?
Yeah, the more people you put, the more you have exposed, right? So
Exactly,
if we're
yeah.
thinking about it logically, the most control you'd have is yeah, paying one combatant. Unfortunately, even though that's the most logical straight line, that's also arguably one of the more obvious ways to get caught. And it's since it's a
Yeah,
very big crime, you don't see that taken very often
no.
because when it has happened, the times where we can all point to in MMA that we know for a fact, it's like that old porn definition. You know it when you see it.
So so that's a way to like to be like super straightforward, but as we said,
Yeah,
like the bad part is that it can look really bad and you get in a lot of trouble. So that's why people don't do it. I think. But then we get to other ways that you can maybe like not like fix the fight, but you can certainly put a lot of influence in the or sway the result. And there you have like the injuries that we already mentioned, like just throwing a guy to the lions when he's injured. But also there you have the other, like the non-fighters. You have the referee, and you have three judges,
yes.
and especially when it comes to betting,
Mhm.
there's a lot that you can do with that. Obviously, you always like. I'm guessing because I obviously not involved into the corruption of the world of MMA, but if I were to do something like that, like you gotta still work within margins of error. You gotta accept that you're not guaranteed to have the result you want, but
Yep.
as long as you can make it believable, you can do it. So, for example, and I'm going to just say it here, when we had cards in Abu Dhabi, in Qatar, uh, you gotta like make sure you win those rounds without a doubt, because
Yeah.
the judges are out there to get you, man. They will give you, if you win a round super clean, they will give it to you because they do not want to look corrupt. But if there's any argument for the other guy, the guy that they want to win, they're gonna give it to them. So
So
it's
let me
not
say let
like,
me say something.
yeah, go.
Sorry. I just want to say real quick though. I don't necessarily disagree, and I definitely don't blame anybody for thinking that. I just want to say that as of this recording, and amid all the really bad officiating that's been marqueing 9 out of 10 events lately, the one event that actually I felt was officiated well and
Was
judged
that?
well recently was the Abu Dhabi card, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Ironically enough. So I want to give
Yeah,
credit where it's due. And we even saw points taken away from, the OV fighter, as they like to say. People love to, get real geographic. I get the Russian connection to the Middle East, but people will take that and they'll just be like, oh, Kazakhs, yeah, they're Russian too, right? They're getting the same. Oh, this guy's from, where's that guy? Where's that? Fuck it, Yagji Muradov from. But yeah, this guy's from wherever, and they'll be like, they'll start like, you don't know, that they know some American like me doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. Like you don't know, you're just grasping at straws right now. So
yeah,
I don't want to feel that neighborhood, but I think it's a good opportunity just to say this, Fenyo, and not to derail you and to keep on the same subject. Is there's a difference between, and we just gave the example of the most outright fixing,
yeah,
which is throwing. That's one end of the spectrum, right? But even within the fixing spectrum, I don't even know if we can include this. So I want to say there is a difference. Not that they are not the same, but there is a there's also a slight difference between fixing and influence.
yeah, for sure.
And one of the things I was worried about, because I was saying the same thing you were before the Abu Dhabi card, and sure enough, right, as soon as the tinfoil hat crowd starts to win Dan Tom a little bit over, we get actually a pretty immaculate performance, which is crazy from both the judges and refs in Abu Dhabi, right? But one of the things I did say is like I don't like to play into the tinfoil hat stuff. Like I talk about you know me, Fenyo, like we did a podcast and you got to see firsthand the disproportionate amount of bad beats and bad luck that your boy falls on, right?
Yeah,
And whether it's justfully explaining it or crying about it, however you want to characterize it, I definitely complained about it, right? Just fairly or unfairly, I definitely complained about it. Do you remember ever me really talking about? Oh, I think it was fixed, bro. Do you ever hear me say that though? Of all the
No,
complaining I did, Fanyo,
no,
and you were around for a lot of it,
and I never say that either. So,
right? Yeah, yeah.
but
So I just want to make it clear to the
we're
audience
just
that
like,
we're
yeah,
not
we're just covering bases
flaming
of the
flames.
way that you
Yeah,
can like
yeah,
influence stuff. I'm not saying that
yeah.
that's not fight fixing, right? Like having like a bias on judging is not necessarily fight fixing. It can be,
Right.
but it's not necessarily. Um, and then you have the referee, and the referee, there's not a lot that the referee can do, but they can play a very big part when it comes to over and unders. So talk about that.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Real quick, just to tie up the previous point, though, I will say the influence part is I only mention influence is when you have the head of the athletic commission, Andy Foster, one of the heads here in the United States, when he's repeating Turkey Al Sheikh and TKO talking points, right? That's what I mean by influence. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's like I'm not somebody saying all the judges are all bought and paid for, but at the same time, when money from that part of the world is clearly influencing politics and procedure in North America and the whole sanctioning body of the sport, then what can't be influenced, right? And we'll talk about the UFC, how they can influence things, but also how we maybe pump the brakes on saying, "Oh, the UFC is definitely involved in the fight fixing, bro." Like, okay, why would they open themselves up to that? You know, like there's more logical explanations which we'll get into.
Yes.
But to Fenyo's question about the refs now, just to tie a knot on that point about the refs, I would argue that if we were doing a hierarchy of fighters, refs, and judges, I would again, they're all accessible. They're all accessible, like the point
Yes.
I just made. But I would argue that the refs are less useful. And Fenyo, I don't know if you watch a lot of other sports. I'm not the best for this, but I will make an analogy because Fenyo, the one sport that I do love and will parallel to a lot of the audience, especially from North American audience to audience abroad, is basketball. It's not as global of a sport as football/soccer, but basketball. And I was a big basketball person. That's where I got this job from because I would sit at home and watch the stats from the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan and this and that. And there was a huge fixing scandal involving a referee. So we're staying on topic here, folks, with the refs. Named Tim Donaghy. This was in the mid-aughts, Fenyo, during the Lakers run. And I remember just being so upset, like feeling like I was a crazy fan where I would watch, Kobe Bryant go up and like literally knife hand chop dudes in the throat. And not only would he not get called for a foul, the other guy would get called for a foul. And not only would the other guy get called for a foul for getting chopped in the throat, they would call him for flagrant fouls, which was like a big no-no in
Yeah.
basketball, right? And I'm just going like, and what the hell? And oh, you're just biased, bro. It's just because your fans not winning. LA Lakers all day, bro. And it would get gaslit, right? And then years later, it comes out, Fenyo, there was a referee involved fixing it. And for those in the know, a lot of the times, and just like people are theorizing with this James Krause scandal, not that James Krause didn't do bad things, he clearly did, right? And he clearly opened the door for it. But some of it is like he would, some people are assuming him, Minner, and certain people had to go down as scapegoat, and Molina were like the scapegoats. There was more people involved in this and that. I'm not gonna fan those flames. I just wanted to state that because the same thing was being said with this basketball case. We're like, come on, you're telling me it was only one ref. But here's the difference, folks. A referee, if we talk about the spectrum of fight fixing, right? If we're talking about the spectrum of referee influence of sports, I would argue that basketball is where they have the most influence, and MMA is actually the opposite of the spectrum, where they would
Yes.
have the least. Because basketball, like fighting, they're both rhythm sports, right? The difference is that even though referees, and this is why they can really break point spreads and play into that, not just making calls against teams that you want to lose. Again, that's more like having a fighter throw the fight. If you're depending on a ref to that, it's going to be a little too obvious. But what you can manipulate is teams get on rhythms and scoring rhythms. That's a perfect thing for basketball. So even if it's like a false call, all you have to do is blow the whistle on what you think is a travel or a double dribble, and you immediately broke the team's
Yes.
momentum. That
Yes.
scoring momentum. You've slowed the pace of the scoring down to either cover your point spread or help a team win or etc. Plus, there are, which we'll get into and say for the legal ways of fixing player props and things you can influence as a player or ref. Now, the difference to MMA is, even though MMA is obviously a very strong rhythm sport, is that even allowing just a single score, proverbial score, hypothetical score in MMA could mean the end of the fight.
Yeah. Uh,
So you really can't guarantee much.
yeah. I mean,
Besides,
there's still stuff that the referees can do, but it's too volatile if you want to like make sure that something happens. Like you don't have access to that.
yeah,
The referee, I feel like they have a lot of power inside the cage in MMA, but they don't have control over how they can use that power because they are at the mercy
yes,
of the fighters, right? But a
yeah,
referee can do a lot. Like for example, like, and we've seen like for example, a guy loses their mouthpiece very clearly, finishing sequence. Stop! Get your mouthpiece back. That's insane. That's insane that a
yeah, yeah,
referee has
yeah,
that power because we don't have clear
sure,
protocols when it comes to that. But
sure.
you don't have any way of knowing that a guy is going to lose their mouthpiece in a finishing sequence, so you cannot rely on that. You cannot pay off
Yes,
a referee
exactly.
to do that, like because it's like the chances are so low. Same with like
So,
taking points, with calling out fouls.
yep.
Like
Point deductions, for example, another thing, Fenyo, is that again, what we talked about initially, it's the betting market, it's the numbers that are going to set these off, right?
yeah,
Like I actually think whatever the company that Dana White's touting is probably as good as Dana says it is, right? The problem was that they didn't listen to the warning, right? They picked it up fine. They actually did their job, right? That IC360 company. Um, but when you talk about, what really tips it off was the round one props, not just the money coming in on Del Valle to win, but money specifically came in on player props that have better odds, Fenyo, for Dulgarian to lose in round one slash lose by round one submission, right? So it makes it more obvious. Now, fighters get finished in round one all the time, but but as we just treaded, and we're not going to retread here, there are ways you can tell why that Dulgarian fight was fishy. Back to the referee points is there are certain prop markets you could play with as far as legal fight fixing, but it would be way too obvious because one of the few ones that the referees can really do is point deductions, right?
yeah,
But here's the problem. The in cage trend, it would be off the radar because when do refs take points? Which, by the way, I actually think we're going to see some points being taken in this next card. I've already talked to Fenyo about that, neither here nor there. But in general, right? When do they take points? So if you were looking at behavior, you're already standing out, right? And prop markets, money already stands out there, right? And C, not only does money stand out there, Fenyo, when it comes to these point deduction props and stuff, you get better odds, like I said. But what they do is they limit you in those houses, so you might not be able to get down more than $500 to $1,000 max. Most places will max you out
oh,
at these
that's
limits, where it's like even if you have a bunch of friends around the world betting it, like that's more people to cut in of your profits, and how much profits are you really making to commit a federal crime and ruin your career,
yeah,
right? As a ref or a fighter, right?
and it's
So
like
that's why I
and
don't
it's
take those
like
too seriously.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Uh, but the one thing I will say, just for the ref things, and to instead of going through everything, I just wanted to make two examples to show that we're not just talking out of our butts here. But it's that overs I think is the most useful. You mentioned perhaps early stoppages. That's something a ref could do. They are the sole arbiter in there. That's the
Yeah,
ironic thing of me putting them on the betting spectrum on the bottom. But by definition, there's only one referee, where NBA refs have three. And in our actual rules, they are the sole arbiter of the cage, right? So they do have the control. But again, I would argue, Fenyo, an early stoppage would be much more obvious to. I would argue. Well, I know we're kind of splitting hairs, but I would argue it's much more obvious than a late stoppage for one, and B. Um, I don't know what the percentage is, but most fights go over slash go to decision, if not outright, anyways. So why not play within those odds? Because if you're betting for a fight to end inside or under, or for a certain fighter to win by finish, like sometimes those opportunities just don't show up, man.
yeah,
We've seen that. You've seen how
and
many
then the
times
referee cannot do anything about that.
and we've seen that at high level, low level, competitive matchups. mismatches.
Yeah,
Sometimes these things just happen. We just get styles make fights, right? And you just get a boring fight where there is no opportunity
yeah.
to step in. So when you really
For
break it
example, like
down, overs is the only thing.
I don't know for a fact, but if I had to guess, like doesn't go the distance was probably minus on Ngannou versus Derrick Lewis, right? and
Yeah, yeah, that's insane. Yeah, yeah, and the only fights I've kind of the one fight that speaking of Derek Lewis, the one fight that you've kind of heard me maybe joke about a fight being fixed or whatnot, which I don't do it often, but I kind of semi jokingly with a wink and a nudge said that Derek Lewis and Jailman
and
was they
Jailton,
both
yeah, was
to go over
with
like an agreement like fuck.
yeah, the over looks sketchy there, man.
But then again, seeing how Jailman fought Volkov and fight since, you're like, oh, maybe he's just how he fights now, you know?
He's that guy at the end of the day, yeah.
Yeah, obviously. But last thing I'll say on the referees, and it's a kind of shout out to that Harry Mack guy on Twitter, who's one of the people really been forefronting this. Obviously, this now it's in the case of the FBI hand, but initially, right? And one of the things he said was that I don't want to misword him like everybody else is, so I want to be careful about that. But there are open investigations, which makes sense. I mean, this is the part of the investigation where that the shaking tree part of the investigation, Fen. So they're going around and they're shaking trees and they're seeing what drops, right?
Yeah.
So there's no surprise there. If anybody is getting questioned or whatever. But he mentioned Jason Herzog was one specifically, which bums me out because I've always been a Jason Herzog guy, but he's had a really bad last year or so of bad calls, right? If we're being fair. And I'm not talking about suspicious calls. I'm just talking about bad calls, right?
Yeah, for
Calling
sure.
a spade. He's had,
People. We are not saying that the referees are corrupt. We are just saying that
right.
it's within the realm of possibilities, right? But
Yeah.
we gotta remember that being an MMA referee, it's a very complicated job. Like MMA is
Yeah.
so volatile. So
Yeah, and if anything, I was defending the referees, right, with that tweet and with what I'm saying here, right, as far as they're saying they're the least culpable, right?
yep,
And if anything, Jason Herzog is one of my favorite referees. However, I will say this, right? If what they're saying is true, and Herzog, who, by the way, I don't know if I have to downgrade him for being one of my favorite referees for his performances or the bigotry that he's using online, if that's his account now, by the
oh
way.
wow, I,
Did you see that? Yeah, he
no,
actually was like
I didn't.
he came at Harry saying like, "Oh, he's transitioning right now," or kind of using one of those just kind of hot,
Oh,
key random insults. I'm
very
like,
cool,
"Oh
very
no."
cool.
Yeah, I know. But that aside, like, and I'm defending the refs here, right? If anything, but I will say, if he is being investigated, we just talked about scenarios and the over being more likely. Remember that Muhammad Yahya fight that he refed in the Middle East before the last Middle East card
That one was
against
the
Steve
that
One?
one. That now that you mentioned that one, worst non-stoppage since I would say
Easy to Santos BSD.
yeah, or Mackenzie Dern versus like Amanda Lemos maybe, but that was insane. The
Yeah,
last knockdown at the end of round one was like a full-on knockout and wasn't even a TKO. That guy was
yeah.
unconscious and he was like woken up by the by the follow-up ground pound, which wasn't when his opponent. Yeah, right. Uh,
Steve Wynn. Yep. Steve
yeah,
Wynn. Yep.
Wen didn't even want to hit him anymore because he knew he
No,
was
it was
like
bad.
fucking up his.
It was bad, dude. And people were joking at the time on the timeline, go, "Oh, ref got the over." But to what we're talking about, it's like that. If a referee were to have influence, like that would be a case of that. I'm not saying it is, by the way. Again, if anything, I've defended Herzog and refs more than
Yeah,
most. I'm just saying that's what it would. That's where the suspicion comes from. And in my opinion, that's the one thing that I could see most realistic if I were to hypothesize.
yeah, and then you have judges, right? Which like
Mm.
split decision is like a popular bet, which like you have no way of knowing if it's going to happen, but you can like read the trends. I'm not saying that it's a bad bet or anything, but I mean if there's money there and like if there's only like one like single atrocious card, people usually forget. If the winner is the right one and
Yeah.
there's like a super sketchy card in between, people will forget. So you can play with that if you want. if you want to be corrupt. Obviously, you don't know if the fight is going to go to the distance on the first place. And as I said, you gotta you gotta understand that there are like margins of error, and like obviously if a
Yep.
fighter won like 3 10-8s in the other judges cards, there's nothing you can do. You gotta go at the very least at 30-27 in that case. Like you cannot like go insane, but when you have a small window, you can use it. And we've seen some crazy split decisions. Um, Especially
Yeah, we've seen that.
that Rinat versus Leal. There was a thirty
Oh
twenty
yeah, it's
seven, I
bad.
think, there.
Bad. Yeah. Yeah, and even in boxing as well, right? Which is parallels being a combat sport. You always see that one really bogus card, at least one really off one. Like
In boxing,
nobody.
it's like you need one.
Yeah, yeah. And to your point, there is plausible deniability because oftentimes it's the lesser known or the regional or the local judge, right? That submits the sketchy card. You know, even everyone loves to shit on Sal D'Amato, but Sal D'Amato actually has a really good record, especially when you consider that he has double the sample size of most judges. So with double the sample size, he should already have like
Yeah, I wouldn't. I
be
wouldn't.
a leader in dissension, and he has
Yeah,
one of the least dissension
I
rates.
wouldn't. Yes,
So
yes. I would say Salty Amaro. I
he
wouldn't
gets
go.
dragged too unfairly. That
Wouldn't
guy.
go out of my way to say he's good, but he's not especially bad. He's just like the
No,
name
yeah,
that everyone remembers.
yeah. You don't have to say he's good, but I do think it's an undeniable fact that he's disproportionately criticized
Yeah, for
because
sure. He's like
the
the
numbers is
punching
like
bag. Yeah.
there's plenty of cards that I can think of going back to BJ Penn, John Fitch that I've disagreed with Sal on. Like that's how long the dude's been doing it. So it's not that I agree with him, right? But it's the fact that I'm like, dude, he's not he's one of the more or less atrocious guys. You know, if he's got a different card, it's usually a 29-28, not like a 30-27. And by the numbers, he's the more rare one to go in dissension.
And sometimes, and the other
But
thing is that people also forget that like there's still, and we say this like all the time when we talk together, but there's still a lot of subjectivity to judging.
yes,
There are like people don't understand that sometimes 30-27 both ways. It's like it's not necessarily wrong.
yeah,
There are close
and,
fights out there, and
mm,
maybe, and even in a close fight, maybe you have an argument for a guy winning all 3 rounds, and maybe the other guy has an argument for winning all 3 rounds too, and both can be valid.
yep. And I will say that again. Not only is the judging harder, and I will say I will respect people like if there's media scoring, I'm looking for people that are like my guy Bronstetter, whether you agree with him or not, uh, he has the scoring intricacies. He's one of the few who will explain the intricacies
Yes,
of his like scores, which I
I
appreciate.
to
And
be fair, I disagree with Aaron like pretty often on scorecards, but I
right,
feel like his explanations make sense most of the time.
yeah, and I will say whether it's Aaron or another media member, when you should really pay attention to their scores is when they're there in person, because they're getting a similar view to the
Yes,
judge.
yes, for sure.
And
People don't understand. Like judges have
yeah, it's a different. Looks
one
like a different
seat.
fight over there.
Yeah, it's like you can
Yeah.
miss punches. You can think that something landed that it didn't. You have the sound. It's a different thing,
Yeah,
man.
it's a complete different thing, and then you have like people like go out using things whether it's MMA decisions, which I know, and you know who you are, bettors out there who you aren't in the media, but you'll use MMA decisions to, and you only do it conveniently on the person you bet on. You know, so it's misguided, right? And even people that are media members, or well, you don't have to be a media member. There's media members that don't know what the hell they're scoring, right? Even if you are someone that are decent at scoring and you're scoring in good faith, most of those scores on MMA decisions are influenced from the broadcasts, and the broadcast misleads people to the point where you'll actually see it affect the betting line when you see DC, especially who's not the greatest at scoring. Someone will get a takedown a little bit. Oh, they're definitely winning,
Yeah,
and you'll see the betting line actually reflect it because people are like watching the broadcast,
yeah.
right?
We saw
And they're
that
getting
like
that,
just last week. Like broadcast was like they were completely sure that Ketlin Vieira was up 2 rounds, and
and they mislead everybody. Same with the Volkov Almeida.
that was not the case at all. Like that was not the case at
Ex-
all.
Exactly. And if you understood criteria, and shout out to Aaron Bonstetter for that fight as well as the Volkov Almeida, he gave great explanations of that live, and you were able to get good live numbers. But people will point to that and go, it was clearly a fix because he was minus 800 favorite at the third round. They're like, no, he was minus 800 the favorite of the third round because commentary, as well as, by the way, which is the worst, because sometimes commentary, this will happen too, they'll actually be right in the sense that they're like, this is actually competitive. I don't want to say either way, which is the most honest and right they are, right? Because it's when they're sure they're usually wrong, but they'll be unsure, and then comes the fucking production, and they'll flash the unofficial stat count, and you'll hear both, from the commentary, the pros that are watching the fight there, to people at home go, "Oh, the number bigger, so he must be winning." And then so you get that same misinformation, and then all the degenerates see that, and then they go influence the live line, and then the broadcast will
People
be like, "Wow, this fighter's a minus 800 to win." So now everybody's like, "Oh yeah, this fighter clearly won." When no,
people
it's not a
forget
clear
that
win.
the significant strikes live count.
Such
First
bullshit.
of all,
They're bullshit after too.
yeah, they're the bullshit after, but live, and I'm not. Whoever does that, it's like an insanely hard job, man.
Yes, yes,
It's
yes, yeah,
like
one
it's
hundred
like
percent.
so
Although
you.
learn what a leg check is. Sorry,
I
learn what a
appreciate that
checking
they
check kick
try
is,
to
though.
have
By the
them,
way,
but you always gotta have them with you always gotta take them with a pinch of salt. And also like uh the significant strike definition is not perfect. I always remember, for example, like because like every strike at distance is considered a significant strike, which I do not agree with, man. Um, that takes me back to like Benson Henderson
yes,
versus
yeah,
Cowboy Cerrone on the UFC one because they fought on WEC first
yes,
twice, I think.
yeah.
But yeah, the UFC one, if you're watching live, they show significant strikes, and Benson Henderson is like
Yes.
120 to 20 strikes for Cowboy Cerrone, and
It's like,
he's like pushing with the lead leg with side kicks that are not hurting a lot, and they are counting every single one of those as a significant strike, which is crazy to me, man.
he was throwing the most slappiest calf kicks before people were glazing calf kicks
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
and
he
getting
was
credit
like
for that
throwing
shit.
so much, and to this
Yeah.
day, and what people remember about that fight is that Benson at one moment hurts Cerrone with a head kick, but the other two rounds were like
Yeah.
insanely close. But people don't remember because all they remember is Benson Henderson outstruck Cerrone like 5-1, which is like
How about Benson Henderson, the original Dewey Coper, the aura pulling to the sky? But Benson would do it when everybody was booing him because he would get some bullshit split decision.
I mean,
Like
yeah,
everyone would boo, and then Benson would be like, "Yes,"
I mean
or he'd propose to
that
his
guy.
wife, which
I
felt
was
bad.
about
Felt
to say
bad.
that that guy's made different, man. Actually, it makes sense that he proposed to the crowd booing because he was on his like natural habitat and didn't want
Environment, yes. Josh Thompson meanwhile going, "What the fuck, bro?" But before, not to get too much into the stat or scoring minutia, I bring that up to say this is that more often than not, and again, this is me being anti tinfoil hat here, is more often than not, and this goes with the same points to the refs as well. With everybody pointing to Big Dan the other week. Oh, see, ref, look at Big Dan. I'm like, no, no, I'm the motherfucker Fanio, stand up for me. Indecisive Dan, who's been saying it for years.
indecisive
Manic
Dan
Mark,
for years,
who's been
man.
saying it for years, right? I'm not defending them in that sense, but my point is it's way more ignorance than there is corruption. There is way more ignorance from the broadcasts to the judges being ignorant on certain things to the refs being ignorant on certain things or messing up. You know what I'm saying? It's more ignorance than it is corruption, I believe. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not discarding the possibility that there's corruption, but if someone like if an investigation went like super hardcore and they said like, you know what, Damir Gluda has never been corrupt in his life, I would not be that surprised to be honest. Like
Yeah, no,
some guys just suck.
well, it's the same. Well, it's a lot of it. It's the same things. Again, I say indecisive, Dan, because he's really indecisive. We've
Yeah,
seen him
yeah,
switch
for sure.
calls. We even live in the action. We've seen him make sketchy calls, right? Even when the action's paused and it's after the fact, that Kyle Dawkins Kevin Holland fight,
Yep.
where he lets Kevin Holland get knocked out and submitted, only to go change his call to no contest. Well, why didn't you stop the fight if you were just going to go no contest or DQ? Why
And
did you
yeah,
let him get knocked out and
people
submitted, choked unconscious? Like,
people
text
were
him.
like yeah, for example, people are like have been like sharing that clip of what's her name? Uh Marina knocked the finish between Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Ribas, and it's like
Mhm.
that to me doesn't look corrupt at all. It looks like incompetence to me, like a bad call.
Yeah,
But that's
and I believe
not
that was Herb Dean,
that one is
right?
not corrupt at all, man.
No, no. No, I believe that was Herb Dean, and that's part and parcel for when Herb Dean does mess up. It looks like that. He's consistent with his mess ups, right? It's a lot. It's bad stoppages. It's where he goes and taps the shoulder, and he does the
He
Tom Cruise
tou-
Mission Impossible. He does the Mission
he
Impossible,
touched them in that one.
and then he's also Herb also has a particularly bad record when it comes to women stoppages in general, especially women and ground and pound stoppages of both sexes. He's really bad with. But my point is, it's these are very back to trends, right? These are traceable trends, and people point, well, Dan Mergliotta with the everyone's pointing to the most recent one, of course, because we're reactionary as human beings, right? And they're like, look at the Matt Favola, Kyle Nelson, but people forget like shouts to Lorosenko brought this up. That Kansas City card, not even like a couple months ago, Dan Mergliotta did that twice in one card where he thought he heard the bell wrong, and he did bad stops, mistimed stops. Now they weren't as direct, they weren't as obvious because the fighter wasn't getting knocked unconscious at the
Yeah,
time, like Matt Favola was.
that one was insane, man.
But again, not to Dan's credit, not defending him, but from a corruption standpoint, no. I just think the dude needs to get his hearing checked and needs to be maybe tighten up his game. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe
Like,
and also like to be charitable to the referees, like there's like a group of like five guys. Yeah, five. I think like there's Herdin, there's Dan,
yeah,
there's Beltran and
yep,
Mark. Those guys do like fights every fucking week, man. Some of those
yeah,
need to take a break, man.
yeah, that
Again,
too, yeah,
they are
that too.
burnt out. Like you would be surprised. Like no wonder they are making like bad calls. They are like calling like hundreds and hundreds of fights a year.
Yep, and back to the judging point though, Fenyo, and your thing about split decisions. And I'm somebody who bets the split decision props, so I know what you're talking about. But again, it's the same thing with the point deduction props. It's such a specific outcome to bet that you'll trigger alarms. Any unusual amounts, they'll trigger it. And again, that's another prop that they limit as well. So again, like how much are you really going to get for that? Again, not that I'm saying that there haven't been corrupt refs or judges and the judges can't be gotten to. Again, I think in the totem pole, they're probably right underneath the fighters, the judges, right? They're above the
Yeah.
refs and under the fighters. But again, between that to the fact that you said, the undeniable fact that it's 15 minutes at minimum, sometimes 25 to even get to your power. Where you have the
Yes.
power, right? Where it
Yes, and
matters,
you're not
right? So it's
guaranteed to
like,
get there. Yeah.
yeah, what are you really going to guarantee? And just like the reffing pool, like you just mentioned, somebody brought this point up where it's a small pool. So um, there's an art. Not that saying people won't blow their jobs, right? But it's just like there's such a small pool. You're one of the lucky people to be at that small table. Why would you mess it up? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And
And as we've been saying, like a lot of the times there's nothing you can do. Like if you told me like Herb Dean was instructed to like give Ronda Rousey every chance she had against Holly Holm, I would not be surprised. But what else was Herb Dean supposed to do with that finishing sequence? He had to stop the fight. Like doesn't matter how
yeah,
much you
yeah,
pay him off. I'm not saying that he was paid off. I'm just saying if they were
right,
to pay him off, like there's nothing else you can do in that situation.
right. And I want to say like more easier and a little bit less limited are general props. Like if a fighter wins by submission, you can get a little more money down on those than a split prop or point deduction. And in that sense, you can kind of control your own player props, but it's still hard. Like a basketball player can be like, man, I average 15 rebounds a game, right? So the betting line is probably going to put it right around 14 or 15 to really make you, to not almost like not give you too much value, make you really flip a coin there, right?
Yeah,
To get that money from you.
and get those
So
50-50 lines. Yeah,
but if you're so consistent with it and you're favored to get over, you could see that and be like, you know what? who's to say I just don't go for as many rebounds this game and I have some friends bet this, and that's where it kind of comes into trouble, right?
Yeah.
And and you can do that in theory, but it's hard. And fighters have tried in a sense of like Glover Teixeira, for example. He's admitted this, not for betting. Well, betting he did bet, but not like sportsbook betting. I forget what was his. I think it was the. No, it wasn't the Iwan Kutlaba because he finished him, but it was in that run where Glover went up to the title when he was beating guys like Iwan Kutlaba. It was one of the guys he went to decision with, and not that Glover doesn't take guys down and go to decision or go for submissions, but he wasn't even striking in some places he could have been. And in the interview, he goes, I was getting too much tunnel vision on there. Just like with the knockout, right? You chase an outcome, you're not going to get it. And Glover was calling himself out for that because it was a friendly bet between a friend where they bet a bottle of whiskey, basically.
Oh, okay.
And he bet his friend a bottle of whiskey that he could get the submission. So he's just joking about that and saying it in the post fight speech. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
throw shade at Glover, but I'm pointing out it's the same dynamic though. If you were to try to control a prop, like this is in your head all the time. I fight at an amateur level, Fenyo. I suck, but if they were to post odds or whatever, I would tell all my friends, "Yo, bet me by submissions. I'm gonna fucking go for it." You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, for
I would
sure.
totally do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but to your point, you still can't guarantee it. It's such a volatile game. You
Yeah.
really can't guarantee it. So that's why I say it's always been around. It will always be a problem, but
And
I don't think it's
there's
a big of a problem as people are making it out to be.
yeah, and then there's like the last like point that I want to touch on before we leave is that we have like fighters, we have the judges, we have the referees, and then we have the UFC, right? The matchmaking. Um, and they obviously they don't usually don't do it for the betting side. They do it for their own benefit, right? But they can control the narrative with the matchmaking a lot. We both have talked about this in the past many times, but I feel like most fans really underrate how much about MMA the matchmakers know. They're
Yeah,
actually pretty good.
yeah, they
I
are.
they know their shit. That's
I
why
talk shit, but yeah,
they get a lot of the no. I mean, I don't agree with the way that they make the fights, but they know what they're doing when they're matching up two fighters, man. Obviously you don't know,
yes.
and on top of that, the one thing that maybe people don't consider often is that they have access to some information and they have some tactics to push a fighter to take a fight here and there when maybe they shouldn't.
Oh yeah, totally,
Obviously, we
absolutely.
have
Yeah,
seen the testimony for not for the current matchmakers, but for matchmakers of the past. Most notably, Gray Maynard talk about Silva and how they first used him to punish some fighters that didn't want to take fights. And Silva was like, "Hey, Gray, I know you're a bad matchup for this guy. Please do me a favor, beat this guy up because we don't want him anymore," which is insane. Because and
yeah,
even that is not guaranteed, obviously. But you can stack the deck in your favor when you know, okay, this guy really needs the money. We know because we are his bosses, right? And this guy really needs the money. He's kind of injured, but he's probably is going to get cleared. We'll match him out with against this guy that we really like and we want him to win. So there's that too, right?
yep. Yeah, and they don't even have to be as explicit like the court findings from back in the day because just like we talked about all these cottage industries of refs they take on the road with them, of the judges the UFC takes on the road with them. We mentioned before with all the people with the Dulgarian and Krause situation all coincidentally being under the same management house. It's that House. Jason House is also the guy, right? So that's kind of ironic choice of words there. But no, the point is they have these managers that are now a small trusted group of theirs that almost work for the
Yes.
promotions, right?
Yeah,
So they don't even have to know or use threats because they know they're working with complicit
the
people who
managers
know the deal and will do it for them.
the managers do it for them, and because the fighters
Yep.
trust the managers, it's very easy for matchmakers to just grab the phone, call someone like Ali who has like a ton of fighters, and it's like, "Hey Ali, we need to get this guy a win. Any of your guys you think might lose this one? Anyone who is kind of injured, maybe?"
Yeah.
And I can tell you that. I was like maybe
Yep.
like more 50-50 on corruption on other levels. For this one, I know for a fact that this is how it
Oh
is, man.
yeah. Absolutely. I don't think they have explicit. I don't think they organize their files between sacrificial lambs and non-sacrificial lambs. But I guarantee you that's how a lot of the managers think of their fighters.
Yeah.
Where unless you've got a real top 15 or title contender, you take care of that guy. You go to bat for that guy. But everybody else are chess pieces that you can sacrifice to the war gods of the UFC. Like, oh,
Uh,
you need someone on short notice. I'm your guy. I got somebody
yes,
who's I know he's
exactly.
desperate. He needs the money. He'll say yes.
And
I got you, man.
they can control narrative so much. Like someone was tweeting
Yeah.
early, forgot who it was. I think it was Caposa actually, who was like contrasting Haoni Barcelos with Peyton Talbot. So
Yes.
Barcelos beats Talbot, and now he's fighting like a very hard matchup in Ricky Simon and the Apex. He's very likely to lose that one. And Talbot is getting the fight of his life against Henry Cejudo in a pay per view. That's crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And it absolutely validates what you're saying, and I agree. But just like with the other things, I don't know if it's gonna want to be air quote responsible or air quote devil's advocate or air quote fair because I do stand by this and believe it. But again, I do believe that even though this is all true, what we just said, I also do believe that people can get carried away with these narratives, like with the fight fixing.
Oh, for
And
sure, for
as
sure.
a guy who, and you do it too, you offer excellent breakdowns on the fight site, especially on the paper with the full preview card. Shout out to that. Get my guy Dan Albert back on there for some. But when I listen to these shows of these full breakdowns, the people that do it on the regular, especially like the betting bros, not like the analysts like yourself, right? Like they get real into the weeds with conspiracy theories, and they'll be like, bro, who do you think? Look at Elise Ardeline's OnlyFans. The UFC definitely wants her to win. Like, I don't think the UFC really cares about
No, no,
Elise
no.
Ardeline.
The
So
UFC is if the UFC Ardelie loses 3 in a row and she's getting like insanely caught, the UFC doesn't give a crap, man.
yeah, and people are like, well, that's why the odds are wide here. I'm like, or maybe that like it just she's probably going to win the fight because this other person's not great in limited game, maybe. But people are like,
Yeah,
no, bro, the fixes in the
no.
UFC wants this person to win. So people will take it too far. You understand what
The
I'm
odds are
saying?
wide because especially in the last one because like it's the first time that Ardeline was like a big favorite in the UFC run. It
Yeah,
was like, bro, it's just like Conejo is like first. She's not even a strawweight. She has been inactive for like two
yeah,
years.
yeah, yeah.
And when she was active, she was not good to begin with. Like the odds were like the
Yeah,
made
yeah.
complete
And by the
sense.
way, I actually picked not seriously like just as like a flyer like an underdog. I actually picked Ruiz, but I did say like dude, Ardeline has like no defense for southpaw. She can't see it at all, and I was like, don't get me wrong, that's not Ruiz's game. Conejo, by the way. But to my point, even though it was a wrong pick, Conejo came out and had her. Uh, I was like, Ardeline
Just
doesn't
striking
deserve to
her
be
with the
favored
left
this
hands,
much because
man.
I was like, yeah, like say what you will, she lost the fight, but she also gave Montserrat Ruiz her best striking performance, which says something.
Yep.
But yeah,
It's
like people get a little carried away. So it is true. I just want to say, folks, but at the same time, like don't get carried away in that. Like they just
yeah,
at the
no,
end of the day, back to this.
they don't give the care they give to someone like Shan O'Malley to most of the roster.
Yeah, yeah, they're not trying to. They're not like, oh, UFC wants to get Jackson McVeigh. They're keeping him on the card because they want to get him a win. Like really, because the guy, their third replacement, Zach Reese, is now a minus like 300 or 400 favorite to beat him on short
Yeah,
notice. Like how?
they just want to fulfill his contract, and if he's good, he's going to stay. And if he's not, like they can replace him very easily. They don't care about this guy for sure.
That's it, man. They don't want the money messed with. That's why whether it's an injury or even an FBI warning, they seem to keep fights on the card.
Yeah, they
And
want to.
when they do get bit, and sorry, when they do get bit, Dana is reacting strong, saying federal fucking prison, right? Because don't mess with the money. That's what it comes down to. They mean it. Unfortunately, the UFC, like they often do, Fenyo, they want to have their cake. They want to have it both ways, right?
Yeah, for
They
sure,
want to
for
have it
sure.
both. They want to be able to put the fight on and then still cry foul and say, "Don't mess with our money." But at the end of the day, what's the common thread in both of those motivations? is their money, man. They
Yeah,
need their contractual revenue, and they don't need you messing with their contracts with betting
yeah.
controversy.
I feel
That's
like
all it is at the
I
end of
feel
the day.
like I feel like people get carried away, and sometimes like corruption comes from very different directions, man. It's not all connected
Yeah,
sometimes, and I feel like the I don't think the UFC is super in bed with the betting part. I mean, they want to keep a good relationship, but the UFC will not fix fights in favor of
right.
the betting world. They can do that on their own. I
Yes.
feel.
Yeah, yeah. And it's crazy because, Dana White, obviously, there's a lot to complain and dislike about him, and he doesn't help his own arguments, especially with his gambling addiction and the betting special that Netflix is dropping on him, right? I get all that. But with that being said, and that making me look extra crazy here, I will go on a limb and say this is one thing Dana said that I feel like he was actually being really honest about. Is it was a while ago, granted, but because people have been asking this, like UFC fixed fights, UFC, WWE, this comparison and criticism has been for years now, folks. Okay, and I remember one of Dana's answers was, and it seemed really genuine, man. He goes, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. In the beginning, I used to get my hopes up real fucking big. But basically, he was saying that because what we're talking about, the game is so volatile that even he couldn't escape that. Even back in the day when they had the Fertitas mafia style control, right?
Yeah,
They couldn't escape that. To where he clearly got burned, like we all do, whether we're betting or whether we just have a real big favorite fighter and they lose. We all experience that letdown. He's no different, right? And he was saying he was those after a handful of those letdowns, you learn in this business you can't control the outcomes.
yeah, and
So
I
again,
feel
not,
like
not 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 saying they don't influence. Not saying they don't influence, folks. Back to influence. From Turkey Al Sheikh, dirty influence to the general influence from managers to UFC. Not that they can't influence, but as much as it pains me to even somewhat defend Dana here, right? I do got to say, I think he was being honest with that. You know what I'm saying? Like he knows, like you can't fix this shit. It's not worth it.
no, I know. The Dana obviously wants certain outcomes in some fights for
Yeah,
sure. But for example, when Chad Mendes fought Conor McGregor, right?
yeah,
Chad Mendes, like obviously he was like coming off vacation, he was not in great shape.
yeah,
They stacked the deck against him,
yep,
but you know that, but that was still a dangerous fight, right? Because
yeah,
Dana knew that if they wanted Conor to be like this huge star, he eventually needed to win tough fights. So yeah, they tried to stack the deck as far as they could for Conor, but they couldn't guarantee the results. They could not. And
no, yeah,
and
yeah,
in MMA, just you just gotta deal with the actual results at the end of the day.
yeah. Connor Nate won, right? Same thing. They tried to do the
Exactly,
same thing, Nate,
exactly.
off of
They
the
tried to
vacation,
set
and
him up in the same way, and I
yeah,
think in that case they also like underestimated how bad of a matchup Nate was, and
yeah.
because I said like the matchmakers know their shit, but no one can predict all the MMA fights. It's impossible.
Yeah, yeah, and so even if even the matchmakers are having trouble, the people putting it together, how are you supposed to have confidence as a fight fixer, whether you're betting on overs or you're getting the fix
Yep,
in with the judges,
exactly.
hypothetically? Again, because like I said, you could just get a stylistic stinker, right? That's just what it is, Derek Lewis Ngannou style, even when you don't expect it to happen. So yeah, man, I don't think it's very. I think it's clearly a problem. Anybody saying that's not a problem or a potential problem, that's just a factual lie. But at the same time, do I think not that it matters what I think, not that most people care or should care, but do I think that it's a ridiculous problem that we have to, do the I know it but I just can't prove it meme for every fight? No, I don't. I don't think it's at that level. And feel free to disagree. It's your show, Fenyo, but that's just my opinion.
No, no, no. I agree with that. I think we covered pretty much everything that we wanted. So
We had a level-headed conversation about this. Crazy.
insane, insane, man. I think we needed to make more accusations, man. Well,
I know, man.
let's make it more inflammatory. I hope Jason Herzog goes to jail.
Investigate the Yaya fight. Yaya win. Never forget. Just kidding.
Cute. Let's bring the
Allegedly,
Yaya.
folks.
Let's
Allegedly.
bring the Yaya files. I'll see you in
Yes.
Valhalla.
I'll see you in Valhalla. Yes.
Okay, Dan, where can people find you? Why are you putting out this week?
Well, hopefully not in an FBI investigation room. Thankfully, my that is the one good thing about my bad gambling run, and being on the wrong end of these beats. They're just like, holy crap, okay, definitely not this guy. Next, you can find me at Dan Tom MMA on all the social platforms. My free Substack at Dan Tom MMA, and I break down fights on the weekly for those interested in that nonsense on the Dogger Pass podcast and the Mayo Media Network.
Okay. When it comes to me, I had a short video talking about this. It's not as in depth and it's more topical about the Dulgarian fight in particular. I had a video about Mizuki earlier this week.
Yeah.
Took a lot of time to come out. And I'm next, other than the full preview that's coming next week, I'm doing a short video on how Habib destroyed the wall walking tactics of Dustin Poirier. It's not very topical, maybe because it's a southpaw boxer versus a Dagestani wrestler, and we might see some
Oh
of
yeah.
that in next week. Even though it's a very different matchup, but it's still some stuff. So watch out for that. That's it. Thank you guys as always. If you want to support me with money, you can head over to Patreon. If you want to buy some merch, the links are below and all of that. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.